Martha's dream was lit. Flamingos wading through Pike Place Market, pink against rain-slick cobblestones. She woke grinning, then gut-punched by usual dread, headlines screaming climate collapse. But those ridiculous birds stuck. 58. She'd logged decades fretting over melting glaciers. Now her hands itched to track something alive, close. That afternoon, she slapped a battered field notebook onto a farmer's market table beside bruised peaches. Urban Birdwatching Collective, no experience, just eyeballs. 3 women paused mid-kale inspection. One pulled Martha's dream was lit. Flamingos wading through Pike Place. But dawn brought crows bickering over spilled market berries instead. That notebook in her hands, its spine cracked like her old teaching planner, felt suddenly silly. 58 years old, tracking urban sparrows like some middle school science project? Yet each scribble, Junco on fire escape, 7:23 a.m., quieted static in her chest, that dread of watching world unravel while grocery lists piled up like unread obituaries. Seattle's gray mornings became scavenger hunts. She fumbled with binoculars, mistaking a crumpled napkin for a warbler, but Bird Brigade, a ragtag collective of baristas, retirees, and one tenacious teen with neon hair, cheered her missteps. Farmers market regulars now paused to ask, "Seen any hawks lately?" As if she'd become neighborhood's unofficial oracle of wings. Her deepest fear wasn't extinction charts or rising tides. It was becoming a bystander in her own life, like those unused piano keys she dusted for decades after Mike passed. But here, ink smudged on her thumb, she was mapping something stubbornly alive. A robin's nest wedged in a construction sign felt like a middle finger to despair. By summer, her notebook brimmed with scribbles, osprey over Duwamish, fledgling's first flight. Pages smelled of rain and lemon zest scones from her market ritual. No flamingos, sure, but crows remembered her, landing near her bench, cocking their heads as if to say, "Keep up, old girl. We're all counting." Martha's flamingo dream still flickered behind her eyelids as she shuffled past Pike Place's fish-tossing theatrics, clutching a field notebook with coffee stains blooming like ink blot tests. 58 years of spreadsheets hadn't prepared her for identifying warblers by ear, but grief over melting glaciers had driven her here. Seattle's Urban Birdwatching Collective met Wednesdays by Market's compost bins, their binoculars dangling like peculiar jewelry. First attempt ended with her mistaking a grocery bag for a heron. Second try, she tripped over a root chasing what turned out to be a squirrel. But on week 3, silver-haired Javier, a retired ornithologist with a penchant for puns, spotted her squinting crows and slid beside her. "Corvid's got you cornered?" He grinned, flipping open her notebook to reveal shaky sketches. His chuckle wasn't mocking, it lit something in her chest. Farmers market regulars began nodding Martha like she belonged. She learned to distinguish cedar waxwings from starlings by their gossipy chirps, logged invasive species encroaching on native shrubs, even caught a barred owl snoozing in a magnolia, its face so grumpy she snorted loud enough to startle it. Notebook pages filled with more than data, they held her frayed hope, pressed between observations like wildflower petals. When wildfires choke sky amber, collective members didn't despair over spreadsheets. They documented how birds fled south early, how raccoons grew bolder hunting dusk. Martha's hands, once stiff from keyboard cramps, now moved sure and quick sketching a juvenile eagle's crooked wing. Climate grief hadn't vanished, but it had company, a flock of small, fierce actions, each entry proof she wasn't just watching world burn. She was learning its language, one messy, glorious page at a time. Martha's dream was lit, flamingos wading through Pike Place, but reality offered pigeons brawling over spilled artisanal donuts. Still, she clutched her field notebook like an anchor. 58, she'd buried a husband, survived layoffs, and now faced eco-grief gnawing her edges. Seattle's drizzle couldn't wash it away. She'd stumbled into Urban Birdwatching Collective on a whim, lured by their flyer Ballard Farmers Market. "Track what thrives," it urged. Martha scoffed. Thriving felt like a luxury when headlines screamed doom. But skepticism gave way to stubborn curiosity. That first morning, hunched near a rain-slicked fire escape, she'd logged a defiant junco pecking concrete cracks. Its tiny resilience mirrored something in her. Mistakes piled up, misidentifying a crow for a raven, spilling coffee on her notes, but so did victories. A barred owl perched atop her apartment building, indifferent to sirens below. A hummingbird's dive-bombing antics made her snort into her thermos. Each scribbled observation was a middle finger to despair. One evening, flipping through dog-eared pages, she noticed patterns. Fewer sparrows. More crows adapting, thriving. Data, not just dread. She started cross-referencing with Collective's archives, her shaky graphs revealing urban shifts invisible to casual glances. When she presented findings their monthly meetup, a cramped community center smelling of wet wool, nods replaced her imagined eye rolls. Someone called her spreadsheet shaman. She'd take it. Age had its perks, less patience for pretense, more for persistence. Martha began stalking green spaces with tenacity of a detective, notebook bristling with wind-tossed pages. Discovery wasn't always grand, a nest woven from dental floss, a robin's feud with a lawn gnome, but it was hers. Purpose, she realized, wasn't some blazing epiphany. It was showing up, ink-stained and determined, to witness what remained. By summer, her notes fueled a neighborhood conservation push. No flamingos, but a petition for native shrubs, backed by her meticulous records of which birds might return if given half a chance. Grief hadn't vanished, but it had company, grit, a thread of hope, and Collective's motley crew of nerds armed with binoculars. Martha's hands no longer shook when she wrote. World was still breaking. So was she sometimes. But like those crows, she'd learned to adapt, one stubborn mark on paper at a time. Martha's dream was lit, flamingos wading through Pike Place, but reality offered pigeons. Still, she clutched her field notebook like a lifeline, its pages crammed with scribbles about crows that gathered near her apartment, their glossy feathers catching Seattle's moody light. Climate headlines had left her gutted, but counting birds? That felt doable. One damp morning, she lugged a folding chair to Cary Park, binoculars bouncing against her chest. A teenager smirked as she fumbled with her thermos, but Martha just grinned. Kid, I've got decades of stubborn in me. She logged a Cooper's hawk dive-bombing a sparrow, nature's tiny drama, and sketched its wingspan with shaky hands. Weeks later, her notebook bulged with data. Farmers market chatter tipped her off to a community exhibit on urban wildlife, so she gambled, blew up her best shots, pinned them beside handwritten notes on migration shifts. One photo stole show, a heron mid-snatch, fish glinting like a silver secret. Crowds clustered around it. A guy in a Seahawks cap, who'd once scoffed her bird obsession, gaped. You took this? Martha's pulse thrummed. Notebook in hand, she pointed to scribbles tracking herons' return dates. See? Earlier every year. That's climate change, buddy. Murmurs spread. Someone clapped. Then whole room erupted. Later, scrolling through texts from newfound birding recruits, she chuckled. Who knew a 58-year-old with a caffeine tremor could spark a movement? Life's worth capturing, she thought, one messy, defiant page at a time. Martha's flamingo dream had been absurd, until it wasn't. That tattered field notebook, once filled with grocery lists, now brimmed with scribbled sightings, a heron stalking market parking lot puddles, juncos nesting in repurposed coffee cups. 58, she traded doom scrolling for dawn patrols, her binoculars slung like a superhero's tool belt. Seattle's concrete jungle became her sanctuary, each graffiti-tagged alleyway a potential warbler hotspot. She rallied others, retired teachers, baristas, a punk baker who spotted owls behind dumpsters. The urban birdwatching collective, ruffled feathers, turned eco-grief into guerrilla science. Farmers market regulars smirked until she guided them toward a peregrine falcon perched on a neon sign. That's not a drone, Karen, she'd deadpan. Notebooks multiplied, pages dog-eared with migration patterns and latte-stained epiphanies. One soggy Tuesday, she spotted teens sketching crows on napkins. She slid her notebook toward them, its spine cracked like desert earth. Your turn. By summer, kids led tours, elders ID'd raptors from mobility scooters, and that punk baker crocheted nest protectors from yarn scraps. Climate anxiety didn't vanish, it just got quieter, drowned out by thrill of a grosbeak's song over traffic. Martha never saw flamingos outside Pike Place. But her flock? Lit. Step outside. Wings are waiting.